Hey, it's Medium Jenny Lee. I'm here with the next raw book discussion. We're on session 37, which makes this video number 38. And before we get started today, I have found out some information that is quite irritating. So my friend Linguist from over at Twitch is reading this book too and following along with the videos. And you might see a lot of her comments on some of the earlier videos right now. I'm sure there'll be comments throughout time on all the other ones. But she pointed out that in the beginning of the book, in the introduction, that it stated that raw is a 6th density entity. And somewhere along the lines, I forgot that, didn't remember it, and this whole entire time, I have thought that raw is a 4th density entity. The whole book, I have thought that raw is 4th density entity. I've said it many times throughout, I don't know, countless of these videos. So every time I've said it, it has partly been incorrect. Or as Ra would say, incorrect. Okay, so I've read, I read ahead. So I've read ahead and I just finished session 41, which is a really long one, by the way. So when we get there, that video is going to be quite lengthy. And it says again at the end of it, the raw has made it to the 6th density and they're working towards the 7th density. But there's been so many times where there was things that were said that made it sound like raw was in the 4th density. However, I was already thinking about this, and another one of my good Twitch friends, CMC Airboss, said in our Discord channel that raw would be all the densities, including the 4th, if they made it to the 6th, just like we're all the densities, even though we're 3rd working on 4th. We're still 1 and 2. So in some ways, it's only partly incorrect, as Ra would say. Partly incorrect. So I apologize for making everybody, including myself, majorly confused about all of this. But from here on out, we shall no longer be saying raw is a 4th density entity, because clearly they are not. And I apologize for all the times that I said it incorrectly, but it was just a distortion of my part. So let's get started on this session. All right. Don asks, is Raw familiar with the results of our efforts today to publish the first book that we did? So remember, I don't know if you guys, I think I might have mentioned it at some point, but originally these books were printed in smaller chunks, and I think there was like 6 of them, maybe 5 or 6, and they omitted a lot of stuff, especially the personal things like about Carla and etc. So this book is the re-listening book, and they were able to put it into just 2 volumes instead of the 4 or 5 or 6 that they originally had done, and they put all the information in there together. So at this point, it's March 12th of 1981. Remember, they started this like in January. They've already tried to start publishing. Pretty cool. Okay. This is Ross' answer. I don't know if you can comment, or no, never mind. Ross says, this is correct. Don's next question. I don't know if you can comment on the difficulty we will have in making the Law of One available to those who would require it or want it. It is not something that is easy to disseminate to those who want it at this time. I am sure there are many, especially the wanderers, who want this information, but we will have to do something else in order to get it into their hands in the way of added material, I'm afraid. Is it possible for you to comment on this? It is possible. Will you comment on it? We shall. Okay. Firstly, the choosing of this group to do some work to serve to serve others was of an intensive nature. Each present sacrificed much for no tangible result. Each may search its heart for some type of sacrifice, knowing that the material sacrifices are the least. The intensive commitment to blending into a harmonious group at the apex of sacrifice. So they're doing all this work day in and day out, doing all the sessions, having to set everything up so that Carla can channel. I do believe that this might have taken a toll on Carla and her physical well-being also in some ways. And you know, at this point, there's been no tangible result. Now, I don't know if over time if they did see a tangible result. I do know a lot of the I do know what happened to Dawn afterwards, which is a whole story that you're welcome to look up. And it wasn't a happy ending. We'll just say that. So there was definitely some sacrifices made to be able to get this information. Under these conditions, we found your vibration. We observed your vibration. It will not be seen often. We do not wish to puff up the pride, but we shall not chaffer with the circumstances necessary for our particular contact. So in this context, chaffer, I don't know how to say it, may be defined as negotiable or haggle, particularly over the terms of agreement. Okay. Thus you have received, and we willingly undertake the honor duty of continuing to offer transmissions and concepts which are, to the best of our ability, precise in nature and grounded in the attempt to unify many of those things that concern you. Right. Secondly, the use you make of these transmissions is completely of your discretion, you know, free will and all that. We suggest the flowing of the natural intuitive senses and minimal of the distortion toward concern. We are content, as we have said, to be able to aid in the evolution of one of your peoples. Whatever effort you make cannot disappoint us, for that number already exceeds one. Okay, so let's back it up here for a second. So they found Dawn and Jim and Carla, and their vibration was right. And this won't happen often. It's a rarity. So they were willing to undertake this massive thing: communication, transmission, readings, writings, book making, etc. And then they're suggesting that they listen to their intuitive senses with a minimal amount of concern about how they're going to get the information to people. Because remember, at some point, Ra said, if they can get this information out and it changes one person's life so that they can understand the law of one, then Ra succeeded in their goal. If just one person was able to understand the law of one from this. And already they have said, whatever efforts you make cannot disappoint us, for the number already exceeds one. Success. And now it's been 41 years later, and how many people have read this book, and how many people have taken the time to share it with others so that they can understand. I'm not the only one doing this. So yeah, I guess Ra's making up for all the distortions they caused when they came to the Egyptians. Okay, next question. Dawn says, I have been very hesitant to ask certain questions for fear that they would be regarded as questions of unimportance. Dawn has a lot of questions. that he thinks that Ra would be like, this is not necessary for the understanding of the law of one. But they're really fun questions. So let's see what happens here. In order to disseminate some of the information that I consider to be of extreme importance, having to do with the evolution of mind, body, and spirit, it seems almost necessary in our society to include information that is of little value. Will you comment on this problem that I have? So Don knows that there's certain information that needs to be shared that's important, but there's so much information that he really wants to know about, or maybe thinks that people would enjoy hearing. So he wants Ra to comment on this issue. We comment as follows. It is quite precisely correct that the level and purity of this contact is dependent upon the level and purity of the information sought, so the questions being asked. Thusly, the continued request for specific information from this particular source is deleterious or harmful to the substance of your purpose. So Ra is just bluntly saying, yes, some of your questions are harmful to the substance of your purpose. Moreover, as we scanned your mind to grasp your situation as regards to the transcript of some of our words, we found that you have been criticized for the type of language construction used to convey data. Due to our orientation with regard to data, even the most specifically answered question would be worded by a group in such a way as to maximize the accuracy of the nuances of the answer. Thus, however, mitigates against what your critic desires in the way of simple, lucid prose. So to me, this makes it sound like whoever Don had read the text for publication said that people are not going to be able to understand this and that you need to simplify it. But that's a huge problem because Don doesn't want to have to change the words that Ra has said. So, more than this we cannot say. These are our observations of your situation. What you wish to do is completely your decision, and we remain at your service in whatever way we may be without breaking the way of confusion. So no matter what Ra wants to do, it's up to Don and Jim and Carla what they do with it because of free will. We will attempt to work around these problems in the dissemination of the law of one. It will take some careful work to do this, but we will. I personally will not cease while still incarnate to attempt to disseminate this. I believe it will be necessary to write a book, most probably about UFOs, since the law of one is connected with the phenomenon. It's connected with all phenomena, but this seems to be the easiest entry into dissemination. All right. I'm having something happen at this exact moment. Okay. I've had a lot of compassion for Don over this whole book. And while I'm reading this sentence, I just start getting like chills, like body chills, and sensing spirit. And like in my mind, as I'm reading the sentence, I start thinking about all of the healing that Don had to do when he got to the other side. It's 11:22. Okay. It's 11:22 and it's 9/11/22. So that's my sign that this is correct. I feel like Don just showed up here. Like right now. And I have like chills all over the place. So, okay. I had no idea this session was going to be something special. Let's read the sentence again, the one that got me feeling weird. It will take some careful work to do this, but we will. I personally will not cease while still incarnate to attempt to disseminate this. Which he did. Sacrificed a lot. Went through a lot. His life ended in not a nice way. And I'm feeling some sadness about it. That he wished it would have gone differently. That in some ways he feels like he failed. But Don, you didn't fail. You didn't fail. Look what we're doing. Look what I'm doing. Look what I've been doing. I am 315 pages into this book of explaining it to people on YouTube. And people are watching it, and people are listening to it, and people are trying to understand it in the best way they can. And people are commenting, and we're discussing, and I'm not the only person doing this. There are people out there all over the place that are doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. So, you didn't. Don, you didn't fail. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. I think exactly what you agreed to do, right? Before you came into that incarnation. He does wish that he did some things differently, though. But you know, that's what reincarnation's for, buddy. You can come back and try it again. I just realized that this session is really short, so the fact that this happened at this exact moment is probably... So going back to this last little bit that we read, he feels like he needs to just write a book about UFOs because that's what's going to get people interested in it. But really, exactly what happened needed to happen. They just needed to put the information out there and let it be. And whatever was going to happen with it was going to happen with it. And I think that clearly Ra was already happy with what had happened with it, and they weren't even finished yet. So the fact that here we are 41 years later and people are still reading and talking about it and trying to understand it, and it's really, really this information, no matter what, no matter how crazy it seems, no matter how much we can't understand some of it, because it's just like not even in our wheelhouse of understanding yet, there's a lot of information in here that is just completely eye-opening and life-changing and perception morphing. You know, right? Yes? Okay. So let's send Don's spirit a little help here, a little gratitude. Let's all send Don some gratitude. Thank you, Don, for doing this for us. Thank you for spending a good portion of your life trying to understand the mysteries of the universe and spending all this time with your beloved Carla and with good old Jim, trying to figure out all this stuff that Ra is sending through Carla's sweet, nice little body person instrument. And thank you. What would I be doing with my time right now if it wasn't for you, Don? So okay, I hope that's helpful for everybody and especially for Don. Let's keep reading this session. My first plan is to, using the UFO in the advertising sense that it was meant by the Confederation, use this as an entry into an explanation of the process of evolution that has gone on this planet. How the rest of, or the Confederation, has been involved in a more understandable way, shall I say, for the population who read it, using the raw material in undistorted form just as has been recorded here in various places through the book to amplify and clarify what we are saying in the book. This is the only way that I can see right now to create enough dissemination for the people who would like to have the law of one for them to be able to get it. I could just go ahead and print up the material we have off the tape recorder and publish it, but we would be unable to disseminate it very well because of distribution problems. So what it seems like to me is that some asshole guy at some publishing company was like, we're not going to publish this book because it's too confusing. What the hell are you talking about? Just make a book about UFOs already. And Don's like, what am I going to do? And then he thinks that this is the only solution, is to write a book about UFOs and like put in the stuff from Raw in there. Which I don't know if that's what they did or not. I haven't read the original books. But thank God somebody decided to just do it like this. To just put it all in here like this so that we can see it undistorted. You know what I mean? And I think it's also interesting because I was kind of beating myself up earlier about messing up the fact that Raw was not 4th density and he's Raw's 6th density this whole time. I was kind of beating myself up about it. And then Don shows up, and that's kind of what he had been doing to himself too. He's like beating himself up about this whole, you know, how do I get this information out to people? So maybe he was here to help me too, just as much as I was here to help him. Let's keep going. Will you comment on my second idea of doing a general book of UFOs, including the material of the Law of One? Okay. We shall comment. We hope that your Raw plans materialize. This is a cosmic joke. You can see I wrote, shake my head. I love when Raw tries to make a joke because they're not funny. This is not funny, Raw. We hope that your Raw plans materialize. Okay. You were asking for such an example of humor, and we feel this is a rather appropriate nexus in which one may be inserted. Continue with your intentions to the best of your natures and abilities. What more can be done, my friends? So Raw's trying to lighten the mood and make Dawn feel better. Aww. Okay. In that case, we'll go ahead and with the questions we have continuing the last session. You said that each third, I want to know, did Don laugh here? There's no, Don laughed. But did he? And they didn't put it in? Or was Don, silently, tears dropping? I don't know. Don, what was happening to you at that moment? Were you able to chuckle a little bit? I hope so. Okay, you said that each third density entity has a higher self in the 6th density, which is moving to the mind-body-spirit complex of the entity as needed. Does this higher self also evolve in growth through the densities, beginning with the 1st density, and does each higher self have a corresponding higher self advanced in densities beyond it? I was wondering the same thing, but good God, that sentence was very difficult to get through. To simplify this concept is our intent. The higher self is a manifestation given to the late 6th density mind-body-spirit complex as a gift from its future selfness. Okay, the mid-7th density's last action before turning toward the allness of the Creator and gaining spiritual mass is to give this resource to the 6th density self, moving as you measure time in the stream of time. What the hell does that mean? This self the mind-body-spirit complex of the late sixth density has then the honor duty of using both the experiences of its total living bank or memory of experienced thoughts and actions, and using the resource of the mind-body-spirit complex totality left behind as a type of infinitely complex thought form. In this way, you may see yourself, your higher self or oversoul, and your mind-body-spirit complex totality as 3 points in a circle. The only distinction is that in your time-space continuum, all are the same being. Okay, let's read that again. See yourself, your higher self, and your mind-body-spirit complex as 3 points in a circle. The only distinction is that of your time-space continuum. The only distinction is that of your time-space continuum. All are the same beings. So the only distinction is that in our time-space continuum, we're like seen like we're separate. So this is what I wrote, because it's something that most people are familiar with. You know, in Christianity, you got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So the Father would be the higher self, the Son would be the self, and the Holy Ghost would be the totality. Does that make sense to you guys? We've got these 3 points in the circle, which would be a triangle. The Holy Trinity, right? And I was looking at it as the Son being the self, because the Son is, you know, is like the offspring of the upper. And then the Father would be the higher self, the person who's like trying to help guide. And then the Holy Ghost, which is like, you know, way more than that, would be the mind-body-spirit complex totality. So it's just funny because so many religions have so many bits and pieces that are right. Like it's all right there. It's all right there. But then everything gets distorted because our human minds like gotta mess everything up. Okay. So I'm still really confused here because this couple of paragraphs, I thought in the last session video that I was starting to understand this whole higher self, mind, body, spirit complex totality situation, but then these are confusing. They make me confused again. So I think we need to read over it again. All right. The higher self is a manifestation. I understood that last time. Given to the late sixth density mind body spirit complex as a gift from its future selfness. The mid seventh density's last action before turning towards the allness of the creator and gaining spiritual mass is to give this resource to the sixth density self. Moving into the stream of time. So all of this is suggesting the whole issue here is time. The whole issue is time, because we see time as a line, a straight line of which this happens here and this happens here and this happens here. But time is happening all time is happening at the same time, and that is just too much for our minds to even, I can't. I just can't. So if all time's happening at the same time, like that would mean that like all your lives that you've ever lived are existing in simultaneously. But then Ross said something about it is not happening simultaneously. But if all time's happening at the same time, then how can it not be happening simultaneously? My brain is going to explode, people. let's go and look at this next paragraph again. Okay. The mind, body, spirit complex of the late sixth density has the honor and duty of using both the experiences of its total living bank or memory of experienced thoughts and actions, and using the resource of the mind, body, spirit complex totality left behind as a type of infinitely complex thought form. So it's like a resource and a manifestation, and so it's not like an entity on its own, but acts like an entity because it's a thought form. And here's the other problem that I'm having here, is because are we talking about individuality or not? Because in the fourth density, it's supposed to be a social memory complex. But see, I think that's where I got hung up on the whole thing, because the social memory complex is like the fourth density, right? And because Ra's a social memory complex, I thought that's what happened. Fourth density is when they like all the spirits come together and they work as one, which is what Ra is. So then I was just thinking this whole time that Ra was fourth density because that's the social memory complex. But as it moves forward, it still stays the social memory complex through the fifth and the sixth and into the seventh. And then when it gets to the end of the seventh, it becomes one with everything again. Here's the issue. Here's the issue. For every answer, there's 50 more questions. If the fourth, fifth, sixth densities, seventh densities are social memory complexes, how in the hell is every individual person having a higher self and a mind, body, spirit complex totality? Because there's just too many things here. Because if what is happening at this exact moment in time is that all the humans on planet Earth are existing as third density beings, some of them are close to fourth, some of them were able to go to fourth and decided to come back, some of them, oh my god, sounds like someone fell upstairs. Oh, I bet it was a trash can because the cat was trying to get in the trash can. Some of them are wanderers who are fourth, fifth, sixth density who come back and live in incarnations. If that's what's happening at this exact time, but somehow all the people of Earth have managed fourth density as a social memory complex, because wouldn't that be what would have to happen at some future time? We really did make it there. Then as that entity moves up to the fifth, sixth, and seventh, what does that mean? What does that mean? How can we be individuals and not be individuals? How can each individual have its own higher self and mind, body, spirit complex totality if we're all supposed to be one after this density? And I get it. The law of one is saying that we're all one. But I don't get it. Please help me. Does somebody out there understand this? Because it's literally going to make me start crying. Let's finish this session, for crying out loud. Okay. That's Don's next question. Thank you, Don. Does each entity have an individual mind, body, spirit complex totality? Yes, Don. Yes. Does every entity have its own mind, body, spirit complex totality? Or do a number of entities share the same mind, body, spirit complex totality? And then Ra's answer is both our statements are correct. I can't do this. I can't do this, people. Both of these statements are correct given the appropriate time-space conditions. Goddamn time. Goddamn time. Each entity has its totality. All right. Let's break this shit down. All right. Each entity has its totality. Each entity has its totality. Each individual. And at the point at which a planetary entity becomes a social memory complex, the totality of this union of entities also has an oversoul. This is a lot of bits and pieces. Each entity has a totality, and when they become a social memory complex, the social memory complex has an oversoul. And its social memory complex totality a resource. As a resource. So each entity has a mind, body, spirit complex totality and a higher self. And when they become a social memory complex, the social memory complex has a higher self and a social memory complex totality as a resource. As always, the sum, which it says raw presumably means to say the whole here. Which the sum is the whole, right? What it adds up to, spiritually speaking, is greater than the sum of its parts. So that the oversoul of a social memory complex is not the sum of the oversouls of its member entities, but operates upon the way of what we call squares, and what we grasp you prefer to call doubling. So then we bring math into this again, for crying out loud. Spiritually speaking, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And the social memory complex, the higher self of the social memory complex, is not all the higher selves of each entity, but it operates in the squares thing that they've talked about before, or what we would call doubling. Then Dawn says, thank you for the explanation of the mathematics too. That was bothering me. Just that part, Dawn. Just that part. Can you define spiritual mass? Spiritual mass is that which begins to attract the outmoving and ongoing vibratory oscillations of beingness into the gravity, speaking in a spiritual sense, well of the greater central sun core or creator of the infinite universes. It's getting all pulled back in together because everything was there, and then it moved outward, and then we start looking inward, so then we start getting pulled back. I got that. At least I got something. I had written a question to myself here. Is mother a mind, body, spirit complex totality? And now I know the answer to that is no. Mother couldn't be a mind, body, spirit complex totality, because that would mean she's just for one entity or for one social memory complex. And that's not what she is. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about mother, you should go watch the Witching Hours episode 11 with Charity Janice. And you will learn all about who the Divine Mother is. Well, this was a short session, but somehow I've managed to make it extraordinarily long. So we learned today what we've learned before. Ra is a 6th density entity. And then the stuff in the actual session was a lot of it was talking about stuff. What are they going to do to publish books so that people will get this information? And then Dawn shows up for us. That was cool. And then Ra makes a really horrible joke. No, I'm just kidding. Ra tries to lighten the mood and make a joke, which I hope that Dawn laughed. And then we went back into this whole mind, body, spirit, complex, totality, higher self stuff, which is just really too much for my brain to handle. And then we got a definition of spiritual mass. So that's the sum of that session. Please comment and tell me what you think. What do you think that was all about? And I hope that you guys send some love to Dawn. If you're interested, we have started a Raw discussion text channel over on the Discord. So I'll put the link for the Discord in the video. However, the Discord link changes quite often. So if you're watching this video sometime in the future, that Discord link might not work. But if you're still interested in joining the Discord link, if you're still interested in joining the Discord channel, you can always put a comment on the video and say, hey, I'd like to join the Discord, and that link doesn't work anymore, and I will gladly send you a new one. We're having a lot of discussions over there about all this Raw stuff too, that isn't necessarily coming up on the YouTube videos. So if you really are interested in getting into the discussions of all of this stuff, you could join us over there if you like. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And there's a lot of videos before this one. There's a lot of videos after this one, if this happens to be the first one that you are stumbling across. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.